All right. Well, so I've been asked to talk about the relationship between quality and equity. And as is hinted at here, they are closely linked. But the more and more I thought about this question after talking with Amber about it as I prepared to come here today, I really thought that the key link between these concepts in my mind and my experience working with researchers at the Center for Urban Education on action research using the equity scorecard tools is that the key link here is fear. And let me say a little bit more about that as I get underway. But first, I want to set the context of this question and why I think it's an important question today. So I think it's not, I would say, an exaggeration to say that there's a revolution happening in curriculum design and delivery of education. And this revolution marks a new modern era. And so, you all know Copernicus, right? Well, not personally, of course, but you know of him. And so, much the way that Copernicus's assertion that the Earth revolves around the sun, really changed our worldview, about our lives here and made us realize that, we mere Earthlings are not the center of the universe. I think this is what's happening, for faculty in higher education. And I'm also a faculty member, by the way, so much of this comes from the faculty perspective. So the modern view of higher education calls on us to be student-centered. In the old days, though, the faculty member, of course, was sort of, they drove the curriculum. They designed the curriculum, they taught the course, they designed the test, they graded the test, boom, they filed the grade. Well, in this modern era, it's a little bit different. And I don't think that the radical revolution of the modern era is really around the shift towards being student-centered. I think that the real sort of revolutionary part is the movement of capital for the production of curricula and learning assessments and pedagogical principles from inside colleges and universities to outside colleges and universities. So it used to be taxpayers gave public higher education money. That money was invested in personnel. Personnel designed education, right? And off we go. So, but in this new modern era, this post-Copernican era, it's a little different because you have these, energetic, passionate, innovative entrepreneurs who come up with ideas for new curricula, new programs, new rubrics. And that's all of us here, I think, really. And so there's a lot of energy going into designing things that can be scaled up. And because this is key to educating more students efficiently and with the available tax dollars. So that movement of capital is really part of a big shift. So whether a college or university or an individual has to pay for that new design, that new curriculum, that new product with money or with their time, because even if you just pay with time and attention, some opportunity cost, there's a cost involved when someone comes with a big idea to your campus and you take it into your arena. And so this always must be accompanied by a sales pitch. And so what does that sales pitch, sound like, right? I think we've probably heard it or maybe even engaged in it, speaking for myself. So the sales pitch goes along the lines of, well, this is a high quality curriculum. The results show that this curriculum is more effective than the curriculum you're using. It's also more efficient. Students take fewer classes and they get to their degree in a shorter amount of time. It's a win-win. Taxpayers are happy, right? They're going to pay less. We're going to have people entering the workforce and being productive in less time. Not only that, but this is an equitable product, right? This curriculum is not going to segregate students of color or low-income students in low-quality learning environments. So in effect, my curriculum is better than your curriculum, right? And so, back to our pre-Copernican faculty member who was, there like doing their thing, right? How is this message received? It's like, well, wait a minute, whoa, you're coming here on my turf telling me, wait a minute, I don't think so, It sounds to me like you're asking me to dumb down the curriculum. Are you asking me to cut standards, to go easy on the test, to let in students who didn't put in the effort that they should have put in to prepare for college? Is that what you're asking? So the way that this reaction, which I think occurs more often than we like it, even acknowledging what Deborah said about this great progress that's documented in your report, this reaction draws a really bright red line, and it's a negative sloping line between a focus on equity and a promise of equity and quality. So that there's a fear, and that's why I mentioned earlier, the relationship between quality and equity is a negative sloping line. If equity is going up, our focus on equity is going up, well, the worry is you're asking me to dumb things down. And, it's the fact is, and again, despite progress, as documented by Deborah and AACU, we can't really measure the relationship with any precision between equity and quality because we haven't really been collecting these data at a fine-grained, disaggregated level by race, ethnicity, and income in order to really be looking at the experiences of different groups within different learning environments. So that fear is really unwarranted. Yet all of us here are investing our time and efforts and talents into developing these innovations. And so, part of the challenge then is to figure out how do we deliver these great ideas at scale without, getting zapped, as we bring this to the pre-Copernican, faculty member. Or at least, get the voltage turned down a little bit so it's not quite so difficult. So there's good news here. We do know something about how to interest people, how to interest folks who have not been part of this conversation. I mean, they're still out there, who haven't been part of this conversation that we've all been so active in. And what we're finding by doing the equity scorecard on different campuses and involving individuals at all levels, staff, administrators, counselors, faculty, involving people at looking at data that's disaggregated by race and ethnicity and income, and asking them to make sense of where are their equity gaps, and bring those gaps as close as we can to practice. And that begins a process of reflection, and that begins a process of innovation. And so we do know something about how to motivate people in this new era. And I'll just provide one example. And there are others, but maybe I can talk about some, I'll sneak those in tomorrow. So I'll talk about one example, which is the Community College of Aurora. And I've chosen the Community College of Aurora because they were part of a project in Colorado called Equity and Excellence. They were one of 3 institutions that did the equity scorecard in a real wholesale dig in, really in-depth way for over 18 months. And the equity scorecard teams, evidence teams, are led by co-team leaders. And the math department chair was a co-team leader. And after a while, he kind of got the hang of it, and he really became committed to equity as a goal. And he began to refer to himself as a first-generation equity worker. And now he's been, telling people about the experience that they've had at Community College of Aurora, because he was able to build a community of practice at Aurora that was committed to equity and committed to quality. And not only that, they also increased their student success rates for students of color and also for all students after implementing some, I'll call them design experiments, pedagogical design experiments, where they looked at the data, they disaggregated it section by section, instructor by instructor, in quantitative literacy, algebraic literacy, and in college algebra. So I'm saying, here I'm an instructor, you're an instructor, we're gonna look together and see, how am I doing in educating students of color? Am I contributing to an equity gap, or am I closing that gap? So that's getting really close to practice. And this did occur with some degree of angst. And one of the speakers among the faculty, acknowledged the difficulty she's experienced when she realized that she was contributing to equity gaps. But rather than slink away, which, by the way, did cross her mind, she did want to exit the teaching profession, she doubled down and she improved, right? And so these low-performing faculty is what James has come to call, when he disaggregated, looking at 12 faculty, and there were some low performers who were creating equity gaps. They looked together, they created peer mentoring, they went into each other's classrooms and observed on the first day, they looked at each other's syllabi, they met one-on-one. It became required. The whole faculty in Aurora did this equity mentoring and to become equity-minded. And not to paint an overly rosy picture, but basically they've created a community of practice. That community of practice is committed to equity and quality, to changing that negatively sloping, fearful line into a positive, right? And so that I think is very inspiring. And because we were so happy and wanted to share this success, we asked, well, I wrote a grant to NSF and they provided funding. We brought together other math faculty to learn about this. And so over 1.5 days with funding from National Science Foundation in October, I was there at Community College of Aurora, and we had 31 mathematics faculty members from Colorado community colleges, 97% of whom were white, because that's the demographics of their math faculty, come together at Aurora, and we had a conference. And so at the conference, we shared this disaggregated data with them. We talked about culturally responsive pedagogy. We shared concepts about microaggressions, and there were activities, and James and his colleagues hosted, tabletop discussions. The reason that I think this is so important, because it points to that there are models and mechanisms through practitioner inquiry to actually bring about a community of practice that's able to carry out an equity agenda with quality. So equity and excellence, that was the name of the project. And I think that's, a wonderful way of looking at it. So I mentioned that as a result, 9 of the 12 faculty members improved, and, that the success rates went up for all students. Equity gaps were closing in the post-equity scorecard equity and excellence project. And I want to note, so at the same time, Colorado was undergoing curriculum redesign, as many states are, right? Guided pathways and pathways redesign. So they did do that curriculum redesign, and that accounts for some improvements in student success. But based on James's analyses, and he said this in many places, many times now, that doesn't account for all of it. So the key was examining their own practices and taking ownership for those practices. And that was what contributed to their improvements. So let's see. All right, so we're able to interest others, which was a bit of a surprise. I've always shied away from ever proposing any proposal that would involve math faculty, even though I know they're critical to equity, because I'm like, oh no, that's impossible. Well, we had this conference, 31 people, and from the survey evaluations, 91% of them said that they were interested to, come on, bring it on, bring me back. Like, I'd like to do more. I'd like to learn more about inquiry. If you invited me to be part of a project, I'd be there. And a big driver for them, what they really cared about, we learned this through focus groups also that we conducted, data. They want the data. They're not only a show me the data crowd, they're a hand me the data crowd. They want to be hands on. So we're learning about buy-in, and we're documenting what does buy-in take. So we know about buy-in. Like scientists, as a social scientist, I just want to let you know we know about buy-in. And buy-in requires, it happens at the head, the heart, and the hands. And the head is, okay, I'm in this with you and I'm figuring this out. Because when you bring that lovely, beautifully designed curriculum and learning assessment from what worked over there and you bring it over here and reality hits the road on my campus, maybe it's gonna go splat a little bit. But if you have ownership of the people in the setting, then they can carry it forward because they have a shared goal. It's a shared purpose. It's really a changing a sense of what we're about. And changing that sense of what we're about cannot happen just structurally or just through reforming of curriculum and tools. So the heart is taking on with urgency the idea that it's time to do this work and to say, if not me, then who? And this group of people did take up that point of view. Finally, hands. To get hands on, I think is really important. So it's okay that our beautifully designed, innovative entrepreneurial products get a little bit, messy once they get out into the real world. There are all sorts of lethal mutations that take them over, right? They don't retain their purity. It's okay because it's important for people who are practitioners to engage in practice, to engage in their craft. That's a point of pride, it's a point of expertise. So what's the relationship between equity and quality? And I had said fear, but the good news is that we're learning about how to produce buy-in and an awareness that doesn't have to be the relationship. So I think collectively, and perhaps some of what we'll talk about over the next day, will be we can sell a vision of a positive relationship between equity and quality. And I think a big piece of it is crafting the message and sort of persistently putting it out there. So to cross that bright red negative line, that fear, and not get zapped, I think that would be good to make 3 promises to the people who we invite to join us on this effort. The first one would be, if you join me in this effort, you're not going to be disrespected and you're not going to be disenfranchised. Even though I have this wonderful, beautiful, scaled up, high quality, efficient, equitable product, I want you as my partner to make it even better. The second thing is you won't be overburdened. This is a collective effort. This is not falling on you. I'm not going to hand you the bag and run. And the third thing is that if you join me in this, you're going to experience a creative time of professional rejuvenation. This is going to be a wonderful and inspiring time of teamwork, and you're going to just really look back on this time with a feeling of pride, because you were in the vanguard of, the modern era, right? When we started to see ourselves not as the center of the universe, but really as a part of society and a key part of society. And again, to keep those promises, those 3 promises, key, disaggregated data, not just at that top level, but closer and closer to practice, where it's really going to drive reflection and change. And this last piece, I think, is too easily overlooked, and it's essential. Time. Time for sense making about what does that data tell me? What is it saying to others? And when what it tells me and what it tells others is different, time to hash it out. So, well, what does equity mean? What's fair? What's unfair? What's quality? Who's quality? What's institutionalized racism? What does that mean? How do I know it when I see it? If I see it, what do I do about it? Am I going to make it worse? How do I get the tools to know how to improve? Right? So if you're asking me to engage in equity, you need to give me, time, right, with my colleagues to produce our shared and collective knowledge and collective motivation to pursue equity. So I believe that if we do sell a vision, along with our wonderful entrepreneurial and innovative curriculum and learning assessments and rubrics, if we sell a vision of a positive relationship between equity and quality, we can change the conversation from that question that comes up over and over again, implicitly often or in other language, that's really doubting the quality of students and a loss of status, to a real conversation about the quality of teaching and learning for our new society, our pluralistic society. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your attention.